Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
Like you're just stuck, waiting for something big to happen.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Like life's on hold or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's even tougher when you're waiting for what you believe are like God's promises for you, especially in relationships.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. It's a huge theme for a lot of people.
So we dug up this episode from a Christian podcast all about waiting on God's promises,
Okay.
specifically about finding a spouse.
Okay. Interesting.
But here's the thing. Even if you're not religious at all, stick with us for this deep dive. There's some really great stuff in this episode about expectations and purpose during those times when we're all just waiting for something, which is, let's face it, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, there's always something, right?
Always something. So one thing that really jumped out at me was how much we buy into all the societal pressures.
Right. It's everywhere. Like we absorb it without even realizing it.
The episode actually calls them toxic narratives.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Toxic, because they set up these crazy expectations, especially about love and marriage.
Totally. Like if you're single, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And your life isn't complete until you find the one and all that.
Right. But the episode pushes back on that big time. It argues that being single isn't a problem to solve.
It's more like a season with its own purpose
Yeah.
and its own value.
Exactly. And it ties that idea to Romans 12.2, which talks about renewing your mind.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it's about recognizing how those societal narratives mess with our thinking. They can really lead us down the wrong path if we're not careful.
Totally. Like, it makes me think about that story of Abraham and Sarah in the Bible.
Oh, yeah, from Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis 16.15. They got impatient waiting for God to give them a child. So they basically took matters into their own hands. And, well, things got complicated.
And messy.
Exactly. Messy consequences. Don't you think that's something we can all relate to? Even outside of a religious context.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times have we jumped into something too soon? A job, a relationship, whatever. Because waiting just felt impossible.
It's like we're programmed for instant gratification these days.
Which, the episode points out, can totally wreck our long-term goals.
For sure. So then the question is, if we're not supposed to rush ahead, how do we handle those long waiting periods?
Right. How do we actually live in that in-between space?
Well, that's where this idea of shifting the focus really clicked for me.
From when to how.
Exactly. From when is this going to happen to how can I make the most of this time?
Yes. Instead of letting the waiting consume you, it's about finding purpose and meaning right now.
The episode talks about seeing, quote, singleness as a gift.
From Matthew 19.12.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful because it can apply to way more than just, wanting to be married. Like anytime we're longing for something we don't have yet.
Definitely. And I think that's a really important point. It's so easy to get caught up in what we don't have.
Right. But if we can reframe it, that waiting period can become a huge opportunity for growth if we choose to see it that way.
I love that. Choosing to see it that way. Because it really is a choice. And that reminds me of the parable of the 10 virgins.
Oh, interesting. How does that fit on?
Well, it's in Matthew chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. 5 of the virgins were wise. They were prepared for the bridegroom's arrival. But the other 5, they weren't prepared. They were foolish.
Oh, right. I remember that one.
So even if you don't know the whole parable, the point is being ready. Waiting isn't just sitting around passively. It's about actively preparing ourselves for those opportunities that are coming, eventually.
And it might take a while.
It might. But we can choose to use that time wisely.
I love that. And I love that image the episode uses of God as an architect, meticulously designing this masterpiece.
It's a great visual, right?
It is. It's like, yeah, we can't see the finished product yet, but we can trust that he's working behind the scenes.
Exactly. And that's where those 2 Bible verses come in that the episode highlights.
Which ones are those?
Isaiah 40.31 reminds us that we can find strength in the Lord, even when waiting feels completely exhausting. And then Romans 8.28, which says that he's working all things together for our good.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Right. Even when things are tough. Those verses are full of comfort and encouragement for anyone going through a waiting season, whatever that looks like.
Oh, sure. So I guess the main takeaway here is that waiting is just part of life. We can't escape it. But it doesn't have to be this horrible, anxiety-filled experience.
Totally. It can actually be a time of prep,
Yeah.
growth, even joy.
If we shift our perspective a little bit.
Exactly. And that makes me wonder, if waiting is this time of preparation, what can you do to make the most of it? In your own life, I mean, what skills could you work on? What could you learn?
Yeah. What would it look like to use this time to become the best version of you so that when the thing you're waiting for finally shows up, you're more than ready?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is. Because waiting might not always be fun, but it can definitely be super fruitful. And who knows, maybe it'll turn out to be the best part of the whole journey.
I like that. The best part.
Thanks for diving in with us today.
My pleasure.
See you next time.
See ya.